Hi ladies, and welcome back to a clutter-free life. And if you're new, welcome. My name is Nina, and in this channel I help women with leveling up in areas such as mindfulness, success, and self-love. So in this video I want to talk about the 5 steps in deciding to help someone in need and how mindfulness come into play in these steps. So this is mostly an automatic process, so it's something that happens unconsciously. But if we are mindful, then we can know which step we're lacking and we can take action or decide not to take action, but do so consciously. So according to social psychologists, there are 5 steps in deciding to help someone, and mindfulness really impact these steps. So the first step is noticing the event, noticing that something unusual is happening. And this often fails due to something called inattentional blindness, which is the failure to notice something very clear, something right in front of us, because we are paying attention to something else. And there is an experiment that a cognitive psychologist actually did. What he actually did was asked students to watch a film, watch a small film where people are passing the ball. So we have 2 teams, one wearing white t-shirts and one wearing a black t-shirt. And the students are supposed to focus on the team that is wearing white t-shirt and count how many times they pass the ball to one another. And they should ignore the people wearing black t-shirts. But then in the middle, he pauses the video and then he asks them how many times did the white team pass the ball, and they usually answered correctly. But then he asked, did you notice the gorilla? And people were like, what? And he replayed the film, and in the middle, while people are passing the ball, a huge gorilla was passing in the middle of the court. And the gorilla would stop for 9 seconds and would do certain gestures, so it was clear. But because the students watching the film were so concentrated in counting how many passes, they failed to notice the gorilla. And then they did an eye tracking technique where they followed the eyes while the students were watching, and they noticed that the students were actually looking at the gorilla for 1 second. So it's not like they weren't looking at it because they were looking at something else. They actually looked at the gorilla, but they didn't notice it simply because they weren't paying attention. Their attention was focused on counting the passes. And this is very interesting for me. And when they redid this, they asked, if this happens to you, would you notice the gorilla? And 90% of people said yes, they would. This is something no, I'm able to notice it. Something happened with the other people that they weren't able to notice it. But actually only 50% noticed the gorilla with all the trials. So this is very interesting. So just being mindful about what's going on can help with this step. But of course, this is something that we don't have a full control over because it is an automatic process. The second step after noticing the event is realizing that this is an emergency, actually labeling what's going on as an emergency. And you would think that it's clear when an emergency is happening. For example, when someone is being catcalled, when someone is trying to steal something, when someone is being harmed, you would notice what's going on. You would know, you would notice what's going on because that's the first step. You would know that this is an emergency. But this might not be true because what we tend to do, if it's not very clear, is we tend to look at the people around us to look for cues whether this is an emergency or not. And if people around us are looking away, doing other things, not paying attention to what's going on, then we might think that this is not an emergency. If it's not clear, we might just ignore it. And fun fact is that when you are living in a city or in a place where there is a lot of population density, so a lot of people living in this place. This pluralistic ignorance, so this pluralistic ignorance is the fact that we give cues to each other unconsciously that nothing's going on. So like we unconsciously decide that this is not an emergency because we are not paying attention, or because we are all looking into each other to see what's going on instead of taking the matter in our own hands. So the more people around, the more dense the population is, the less likely we are going to see this and label this as an emergency. And this sucks. And this really sucks because we think that if we are around other people and we are in an emergency, if we need help, if we are around other people, then we are more likely to get help. But that's not the case because of pluralistic ignorance, because people look into each other for cues. And if everyone is ignoring, then you might not get help. So if someone actually decides that this is an emergency, if they noticed the event, then decided this is an emergency, the third step is to actually take responsibility. So like, okay, this is an emergency, but should I be the one who helps? And you can't really blame people whether they take responsibility or not, because there's a lot of steps in our minds that go on when we decide if this is our responsibility or not. Maybe we should take our safety into consideration. Are we able to do this? There's a lot of steps that goes on. But the thing is, if there are a lot of people around us, we tend to say that, oh, someone else might be able to do it better than me. Or, I don't know, I don't want to get involved. So we just put the responsibility, we diffuse the responsibility to other people. And this is called diffusion of responsibility. So the third step and the fourth step, so pluralistic ignorance and diffusion of responsibility, simply being aware of them, simply being aware that these things happen and this is what caused people to act or not to act, would make you more mindful the next time someone needs help. You would know then that people are just questioning whether they're supposed to help, just as you are. So instead of looking at someone else and deciding, oh, should I help because other people are not helping? So instead of looking at other people to see if this is an emergency or not, which is pluralistic ignorance, or instead of looking at someone else and expecting them to help, you would know that everyone is doing this. So when you are mindful of this, you are more likely to take action yourself and to help someone. So after you decide that this is your responsibility, because other people might not do it because they're also thinking in the same way, you need to decide what to do. You need to choose an action plan. What can I do next? You might call 911. You might need a fire extinguisher. The person might need CPR. You might need help from other people. So you would want to check what is the best thing to do. And the thing is, this is also not very clear, and this comes with its own risks. For example, if someone is drowning, would you want to jump in to save them? The answer is no, because even if you kind of know how to swim, if you're not a professional lifeguard, then you wouldn't be able to save them and you would drown. But the right technique would be to actually give them something to hold on to. For example, a life jacket. And if you do need help from people around you, you wouldn't want to risk the diffusion of responsibility again. So if you say, I need help, then the cycle goes on and on. So to avoid that, if you do need help in helping someone else, you have to point to someone in the crowd and actually ask them specifically to help and give them specific direction. For example, if you are giving CPR for someone and you need someone to call 911, you just point at someone in the crowd and tell them, call 911. And if they act upon it, then good. If they don't, then you point to someone else. This way, help is more likely to occur than if you just scream at people to help you. So the last step would actually be to provide help and apply your plan of action. So this is kind of a complicated video. I hope I explained it the best I could, and I hope that you find it helpful. Just the fact that you are mindful the next time you go out, and just the fact that you know these 5 steps, then you are more likely to help someone in need. Because we all fall into this inattentional bias or pluralistic ignorance or diffusion of responsibility. And this is normal, but just the fact that you are aware of it would be beneficial the next time you're out. So that's it for this video. I really hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to comment any question that you have. You can share a story when you were able to provide help or you weren't, and why. And I will see you in the next one. May you have a clutter-free life.